So my talk today is called It's My Story. Last year I did a talk, and for the last few years I've been going around to other JDRF chapters and talking about my podcast and about tools of type 1s and what I've learned from the diabetes community. But this year I wanted to change it a little bit and talk about my story and how I have gone from professional basketball player to professional diabetic. And we'll talk a little bit about that throughout. Because I am like many of you, I live with diabetes. And when I was diagnosed, I had an amazing team of doctors, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was a very rare experience. And because of JDRF and the education that they provided in partnership with the hospital where I was diagnosed, I had this amazing outlook presented to me by my care team. And so I start all of my presentations with this for all of you guys, and that's that all your dreams are still valid. So if you take nothing away from my presentation, if you have to go now, or if there's like, you're cooking dinner and the boiling water is overflowing and you've made pasta this week more than the rest of your life combined, that's fine. Take this away. All the dreams that you have for your life are still within reach as long as you take care of your diabetes. And what I didn't know when my care team told me that is that that would set the framework for everything that I wanted for my life at the time. I was diagnosed at 16, but before I get into that, I did want to say that I wrote this presentation on March 5th. So that was, a little over a month ago, about 6 weeks ago. And I took this photo on an airplane March 6th. And this is my fiance, Erica. And I put this in here because I wanted you guys to know that the world is a very different place from the time that I wrote this presentation first. We have all had some sort of big impact, whether economic, whether health-wise, whether just sheltering at home. And I wanted to express to you guys that I've been to 25 of these events over the past 2.5 years. And I will never take for granted being able to gather as a diabetes community again. And I think there's so much power in us gathering here online. And this may be our new normal for the foreseeable future. But I look forward to the day that next time that we're all in the same room together, and I could look at you all in the eyes and shake your hands and tell my story to you guys. So I did want to say, wherever you are out there, whatever is coming your way, I see you, I hear you. It's hard for me as well. I put on a good face and I make a lot of jokes, but this is a real situation that's very different and very hard, and change is difficult. So if you're feeling a little bit stressed, I put this in there just because I wanted to know that during this time, I'm appreciative that I get to come here and talk to you guys online. But I look forward to the next time that we can gather together as a diabetes community, because my life has changed and is much better because of that opportunity. Okay, so back to the story. Enough preamble, enough side conversations from me. Part one, I love this game. When I was 16 years old, I had obviously a great mop top of hair, as you guys can see. It's clear that those curls are flowing, and that was my #1 basketball skill, obviously, was the hair. I also learned a thing about myself. You see that picture there in the bottom right? I was an influencer in training early. I like to stand in front of walls and have my picture taken. And for most of you guys, you'll know that that's all influencers do. We stand in front of things and people take pictures of us. So this is just me getting started for my career early. But basketball was the most important thing to my life. And that when I was on the way to the hospital for diagnosis, there was like sad music playing. My mom and I were driving. It was New Year's Day, 2005. It was a rainy, cold, kind of gray Dallas day. And the Postal Service was on my mom's radio. So like a single tear came down my eye and I didn't know what to do. And the first thought was, am I going to be able to play basketball again? Because that was the most important thing for me. And my entire life, it had been my favorite thing. So when I got to my doctors and I got to my diabetes education team, and they said, whatever dreams you have for your life are still within reach, the first thing I said was, oh, I want to play basketball. In my whole life, my dream had been play college and then have a chance to go play in the pros. For that, that was my #1 thing. When my doctors told me I could do that as long as I took care of myself, I filtered almost all of my diabetes decisions through that goal. I was able to become one of the best basketball players in the state of Texas at the time in high school. I got a college scholarship to the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs. And then I had a chance to go play professionally on playing against, most famously, the world famous Harlem Globetrotters. I was the first ever type 1 diabetic member of the Washington Generals. So here are 3 photos. I'll let you guess which one of these photos I don't have diabetes in. Hint, hint, it's the one on the far left. And that's me and my sister and my brother at our house when I was younger. There's me in the middle. That's a picture of me playing basketball at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. And then that picture on the right, this was a big moment for me. It was in 2012, and I was off the coast of Iran, so in the Persian Gulf, playing a basketball game on an aircraft carrier, the USS John C. Stennis. So I remember coming out of the game, we're on the flight deck. I come out, I sit down, and I look over the side, and there's like a 60-foot drop off to the ocean, and we're in the middle of the Persian Gulf. You can't see land on any of the sides. And I was like, wow, what a day this is. This is a pretty cool thing that I get to do. So, I think that like all dreams, eventually my playing days came to an end. And when I was 25 years old, it became pretty clear that I wasn't going to be able to make basketball my career as a player anymore. And so, once my career ended, I had a choice to make. I had to say, okay, well, what am I going to do now? I've defined my entire life by being a basketball player, by being an athlete. What is the next step? So within that, I want to take a little side before we kind of go into the story of diabetics doing things. By the way, here's another picture of me in front of a wall. This is 2 pictures of me in front of a wall for those of you keeping score at home. But I want to talk about achievement culture in diabetes. You guys have seen a lot of amazing, inspiring people that have spoken to you at this summit this week. Some of them are my really good friends, and I've known them, and they've become my awesome friends in diabetes. But I want you to know that I'm not here giving you this talk because I was such a superb, amazing professional athlete. As a professional athlete, I honestly wasn't that good, but I did make it. So I'm leaving it there. But I want you to know that you don't have to be a professional athlete to have an inspiring story with diabetes. You don't have to be a celebrity. You don't have to be an actor. You don't have to be a movie star. Your story with diabetes matters. Outside of playing a couple of really cool games against the Harlem Globetrotters, my sports career is not that exciting. I did my best every time I could, and I played really hard, and I played for as long as I could. But I want you guys to know that you don't have to do that. If you're like, man, Rob, I just am not that into sports. I'm really, I don't want to be on the big stage. Public speaking gives me anxiety. That's super normal. You can be a totally regular person, and your story matters. So I don't want you guys out there to get discouraged by all of these amazing people that we're talking to. I want you guys to feel encouraged by sometimes a huge win in the diabetes world means you woke up and you made it to school on time, or you made it through a work meeting after you got a low alarm. Your achievements are not, your worth as a diabetic is not based on your achievement. So I want you guys to take that away from this as well. Before I founded Diabetics Doing Things in 2015, I'd had diabetes for 10 years. Wow, my fingers disappear in the background there. I had diabetes for 10 years, and I didn't really talk about it. In fact, I used to hide it. I tell a story where I met someone for the first time at a Chipotle. He walked up and he saw my pump tubing hanging in my shorts, and his pump tubing, he had a pump as well. And he's like, hey man, me too. And then he just tapped my pump and then ran away. He disappeared like a little gnome. And he, up until that point, I had never seen myself as a diabetic. I, of course, told my friends and my family knew, and I was open with them about my care, but I wasn't public about it. And that was something that I didn't know at the time was really negatively affecting me. Sahil mentioned on the last panel that it took him a lot of courage to work up to make an Instagram. For me as well, it took a lot of years of not knowing anything about diabetes and not having any friends with diabetes. But in 2015, I got this awesome opportunity. I got to go to Colombia on a work exchange. I don't know if you notice the theme here, but here I am again, standing in front of a wall. So this is 3, maybe 4 for these. So I'm clearly finding my calling here. But in Colombia, I don't speak Spanish, and I also am 6'6", so I stand out like a sore thumb because most people in Colombia are a little bit shorter than that. So I wasn't allowed to leave my hotel without my translator. That's my translator right there, Daniel. He was awesome. And I was there for 2 weeks. So of course he had nights where he had to go do regular things, and honestly probably didn't want to hang out with me too much because speaking English was hard for him. But anyway, so I was in my hotel room by myself, and I decided to use that time to try to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I was 26, about to be 27. And I was kind of shaking my fist at the heavens and that millennial funk, what am I going to do with my life, man? How am I going to help people? because I remember something that my dad told me when I was younger. He said, "You're always happiest when you're helping people." And so I believed that was true. So I said, okay, well, I got to find out something that helps people because that's what's going to make me happy. But who can I help? And just as I said that, and like, kind of walking through that in my mind, my insulin pump fell out of my gym shorts. You guys know that when you're wearing gym shorts and you're leaning back in a chair, if you have a tube pump, it's going to fall on the floor. Like, it's not a matter of when, it's a matter of, or if, it's a matter of when. And it clattered on the floor, and I looked at it and I had that quick moment of clarity, and I was like, wow, I could help. Maybe I could help people with diabetes. Maybe my story could help someone who's out there struggling to help achieve their dreams. So I was like, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? I'm gonna try it. And I just listened to this podcast called Serial, which seems weird to mention now, but it's as like old, but it's still like one of the great podcasts. And I was like, that might be interesting. I've never done a podcast before. What will I call it? So I decided I was going to call it as a working title. I was like, this sounds okay for now. I'll probably change it later. Diabetics Doing Things. And what I didn't know at the time was that there were so many people with diabetes who were doing incredible things, whether they were climbing Mount Everest or running across Canada or 7 marathons in 7 days, or helping people get insulin from across the border and different things along that nature. I was able to meet all these people and talk about the things that they were doing. And it opened up an entire new world for me. And Diabetics Doing Things was born. My goal from the start was to help one person. And I read this article that said, when I was kind of researching about podcasts, I read this article that 80% of the podcasts that were on iTunes at the time only had 3 episodes, because people get excited, they come up with an idea, and then they get distracted or they get busy or they stop doing it. So I committed to doing 10 episodes. And my goal for myself was to help one person. I committed to doing 10 podcast episodes, and I made myself promise that if one person reached out, said it helped them, or said that they liked it, I would continue to do it. Well, I'm still here doing it. It's 2020. That was in 2015. So I'm thankful for the people who reached out during those first 10 episodes and said, hey, this was awesome. This helped me. I want you to keep doing this. So I got thrown into this community that I had no idea about. And it is one of the best things about social media. There's a lot of negativity around social media in general because we're spending too much time on our phones, on our computers. And sometimes a lot of the rhetoric is negative, but there's a lot of positives as well. And the diabetes community is one of those really hidden gems. So most people ask me at this point, or in talks like this, Rob, like, how do I get started? Like, I want to go speak. I want to start a podcast. I want to start a blog. And the thing that I tell them is that if you go to my Instagram or Diabetics Doing Things Instagram, you see them today, it looks like, we got some cool stuff going on. We got a lot of posts, we got a lot of followers, but it didn't always start that way. And that was because at the beginning, I remembered that I wanted to change my metrics. I didn't start out to get 1 million downloads. That would have sounded great. I would have agreed that that was cool. But I started with trying to help one person. Pretty simple, pretty easy. And it's honestly like a mind trick. Like if I'm doing things that help one person, then more people are going to get the help that they need. And sometimes that person is me. I'm the person that gets the help. So over the past 4 years, we have done a ton of interviews, over 175. We've published podcasts with guests from all over the world, the US, Canada, Australia, Ireland, UK, Sweden, South Africa, India, all over the world. And we've surpassed 1 million downloads from over 50 countries. And it's also given me the opportunity to speak to people like you. This is my 25th TypeOneNation Summit. I'm still going to count it, even though I'm not there. We've done 5 live podcasts. I've been to diabetes camps in Colorado and Montana and all over the country. To ADA events, to AAD conferences. And I even got to go to Switzerland one time, which was pretty cool to meet people like us with diabetes over in Europe. And I have some pictures of me in front of, look at me in front of a wall again. Here we go. Awesome. Just living my truth in front of a wall. So I really did go and turn from a professional basketball player to a professional diabetic. And the craziest thing about all of it is that as I meet more people like you guys, and here's some pictures, these are just from 2020 events, which unfortunately were cut short. After all of this, I learned a few things. And the number one thing that I learned is that being in the diabetes community has tremendous benefits. In the study that I learned, I read this poster session at ADA Scientific Sessions in 2018. And for those of you who don't know what the ADA Scientific Sessions are, it's the biggest conference for endocrinologists and diabetes educators from all over the world. Like 20,000 doctors come to this big event hall, and they do a ton of like educational sessions and things like that. And I found this one thing, and the title of it was A1C Outcomes and the Diabetes Community. And what I learned from that study was, I put it right here, 100% of patients in the study who were involved in diabetes blogs and social media had a better A1C outcome than patients who weren't. And I knew that from my life. My A1C, fortunately, I've been very, very privileged and very lucky that my A1C has always been relatively in range. But since I started Diabetics Doing Things, it started at like a 7.1. And since then, it's never been above 6.5. So my clinical outcomes have increased as well. And the life that I live is basically unchanged. So I would encourage you guys all to, if you're not involved in the social media diabetes community, to do so. So here I am. I went from professional athlete to professional diabetic. I went from dunking a basketball to sipping juice boxes on stage wearing the diabetic hoodie. So I transitioned, I evolved, I changed, and I think that you guys can as well. This community is so welcoming. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have been able to come to Detroit had I not met Jeff at a JDRF meeting. So go volunteer at JDRF, get involved in your home chapter, and there's potential for opportunity there. You can help someone, you can make a difference in someone's life. You can be the change that allows a kid like me to hear that his dreams are still valid, even with type 1 diabetes. So I'd encourage you guys to do that. And my call to action for you before we go to Q&A, and I see some questions coming in, I got to figure out how to get to those before I do that. But I want you to do two things. I want you to know that your dreams are valid, whatever they are. They're within your reach. You'll have to take care of your diabetes, but the way that I framed it was the key for me to getting what I wanted was managing my blood sugars and taking care of myself. And if I did that, the whole world was mine. So I want you guys to know that as well. Whatever it is you want to do, it could be crazy. I hope it is. I hope it's crazy. But I want you guys to go out and reach for it and not let your diabetes stop you. And number two, this is a new one for me. Embrace your story. Your story matters. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter how you were diagnosed. There may be someone who's in this Zoom room who needs to hear that you're going through the same things that they are. And I'm living proof of that. So, my story has changed a lot over the last few years. I'm a very online person. It's easy to find me. I answer my messages, and I love meeting new friends. And I actually have a cool thing coming out this weekend. If you want to learn more about me, you can just go to my Instagram. If you click the link in my bio, this pops up, and it has all of the things that I do and sell or promote are in there. And then I also have a live show that's starting this Sunday, where I'm going to be interviewing some people who were actually on some of the panels here earlier. And I'm going to be interviewing people live on Instagram and doing a really cool kind of talk show with multiple guests and musical guests and comedy every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central. So I know you guys are on Eastern time, so that'd be 8 p.m. Eastern for you guys. Cool. So with that.
And Rob, I will help moderate with you.
Great.
If you turn off your share.
All right.
Cool.
Stop and share.
We can see you. Yep. Awesome. So first of all, though, I have a couple of questions. First of all, okay. I am just like so in awe that you got to play against the Harlem Globetrotters. I grew up with them, and my sister used to pretend she was Meadowlark Lemon, although I think she actually thought she was Meadowlark Lemon. And she would do circles around me in the backyard. We lived for the Harlem Globetrotters. And then why is your dog named Michael J. Fox? Because you're a little too young for Alex P. Keaton, so.
Okay, so two answers, I guess. My playing against the Harlem Globetrotters was like the coolest thing ever, for exactly the reason that you said. Almost everybody has a Harlem Globetrotter story, no matter how old they are, no matter where they come from. The Harlem Globetrotters have been a staple in this country and around the world for the last 80 years. It's pretty incredible to be a part of that. I remember too, like we would play like 6 games a week, and I'd be always tired. We'd be in a new town every day. But in the fourth quarter, they let all the kids storm the court and do the YMCA with the Globetrotters. So when you're on the Generals, you have to sit there and look angry and look mean, and the kids point at you and stuff. But I would always see all those kids run out there having the time of their life. dancing, doing the YMCA with the Harlem Globetrotters, and I would think, you know what, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we would go, and then we would lose. And the second thing is my cat, my cat is actually over here somewhere. Yeah, there he is. His name is Michael J. Fox, and that was his name. I adopted him from a friend, but he doesn't answer to Mike. He doesn't answer to Mikey. He answers to Michael. So it's very clear there. I'll actually pick him up.
It's actually just like Alex P. Keaton. Alex was really formal.
Oh. Yeah, there's Michael. He's not much of a keynote speaker, but.
Mine is sleeping as usual in the bedroom. I have found working from home, it's not any different than when I'm away at work. She sleeps.
Yep.
So I do have questions for you.
Great.
First one, what was your most fun podcast you did, and what was your most fun place you visited?
Well, great question, Denise. Hi. My favorite podcast, I interviewed a guy, I guess about almost 4 years ago now, and his name was Jeremy Robertson, and he's a pilot from Australia. And he flew on Qantas Airlines, which is like the big, like it's like the American Airlines of Australia. And he was like their lead pilot at age 31. He trained his entire life to be a pilot. And when he was 31, he landed in LA, and he went to the doctor, because when you're a pilot, you have to go get your medicals checked before you take long trips. And his doctor was like, hey man, you need to fly back to Australia right now, but you can't fly, you have to ride. And because you have type 1 diabetes. And he was diagnosed with type 1 at the age of 31. And people like me might sulk or like get depressed or like get down for a little while about that. But Jeremy decided he was just going to go to medical school and become a doctor. And so now he is. So now he's a pilot and a doctor with type 1, and he's actively working with the FAA on reversing the legislation for people with type 1 diabetes to get their class 1A, I think, medical approval to fly commercial aircraft. And there was a guy, I think last week, that got approved in the US as the first pilot with type 1 insulin dependent diabetes that is cleared for a class 1A medical. So
wow, that's amazing. Just
getting to meet somebody who's doing those amazing things was just such a privilege. And Jeremy has become a great friend.
And then Christine asks, her son has T1D, and he's 11 years old. He plays club soccer, and his BS rise during games and then fall fats 1 hour later. How did you manage your BS during basketball games? Did it affect your A1C?
Yeah, so this is a tough question. And I think a lot of people, even who aren't athletes or who just recreational exercise, have this challenge as well. Exercise is difficult. I'll give you some examples. When I was in college, college games are very stressful, very high intensity, and you work really hard to get to them. So my blood sugar would go from like a fasting blood sugar of 80, and it would spike to like 400 before games because I would get so hyped up and so much adrenaline and cortisol in my body. So I would rise during games because it gets really intense, and then I would crash afterwards as well. So I think the thing that I had to do was really look at my insulin on board before I started doing my exercise, playing my games. Practice was also different. Practice and games were different. So I had to get a routine that allowed me not to spike too high, so that I wouldn't have to correct and then crash low later. But yeah, I think the main thing is, like, when you're young and it feels like you're different, it's really difficult. And for, kids are really mean to each other sometimes, and they say things that they don't know how much they hurt. So I'd encourage you to just say, hey, it's normal. I have dealt with highs and lows. We could probably go watch every one of my college basketball games, and I could tell you which ones my blood sugar was high and which ones my blood sugar was in range, because the ones where I was in range, I played a whole lot better. So diabetes is a challenge for sure. And, I think I would just make sure that you test or wear the CGM all at the same times. I actually play basketball with my pump connected now. I have these tights and leggings that have pockets in them that I can keep it close to me. So I'm able to run and play basketball. And that has helped a lot too. But the main thing is, I for sure get a CGM if you can, and do your best to adjust the routine and keep it as consistent as possible. I think you're still on mute, Tammy.
Thank you. Do you recommend kids with diabetes have a social media presence as well?
Yeah, so I think it's, I'm not a parent, but I understand the need to want to make sure that your children are protected and their privacy is very, very important. So I would I think it's really important for kids with diabetes to just be connected to other kids. So if there's a camp or a local community or a JDRF chapter, I think kids on social media, it really depends on how comfortable you are. You can also make their profiles private so that only the people that you approve can see their stuff, which I think I would recommend if I was trying to make that decision for my own son or daughter. That's what I would do. But yes, I think it's important for young people, especially, to see people like me and like Jillian and like the hangry woman like Mila and like Grace and Salt, like Kiri and like Sahil, because you never know what you'll learn. And I think it's important, like that picture I showed you of me drinking the juice box. Somebody came up to me after that session, and it was a mom and her daughter, and said, it meant so much to me to see a grown man chug a juice box on stage. And because that's a real thing that I do. Yeah. And it seems really normal. So I think, manage it, and make sure that you have an open conversation with your son or daughter about it. But it's important to have that exposure to people who are living with diabetes.
And I love this question. How tall are you, and do you own any fish?
I am 6'6", so 200 centimeters, right on the money. And I don't own any fish, but I do have some salmon burgers in the freezer. That's the closest fish I have. I've never owned a fish, really. I guess I had a betta when I was in high school, but that was pretty easy, pretty simple.
If you could have coffee or lunch with any T1D, who would it be and why?
Ooh, coffee or lunch with any T1D. Who would it be or why? There's a lot of really cool people with diabetes, and I've gotten to meet almost all the ones that I want. I think Robin Arzon, I'm doing Peloton right now, so I'd love to get coffee with her and go for a run or something. But, I have had coffee and lunch with almost all of the people who were on the panel. And I have to say that they're some of my favorite people with diabetes. So that group would be a great one to get coffee and lunch with.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a pretty lively lunch.
Definitely.
So Christine is asking, where's your diabetic hoodie? She bought one last year and it's her favorite. My boyfriend loves when I wear it. Wearing it in a way has made it easier to talk about. Thank you, Rob. My 6-year-old just jumped on my lap to listen to you.
Oh man, well that's so awesome. And thank you. Yeah, so I have my diabetic hoodie is still available. If you go click the link in my Instagram bio. This is the first keynote that I've given where I wasn't wearing it. And I feel a little bit weird about it, but I also was like, you know what? I can talk about it. I'll answer the questions. I love the diabetic hoodie. I've been thinking about making diabetic masks. I just want to make sure to be cautious and try not to be too, try not to capitalize on a bad situation. But also, wearing that, sometimes when I go and fly to these events, I have that big diabetic, like all in block letters across my chest. And I forget that I'm wearing it. And I'm walking through the airport and people are looking at me funny because like TSA agents are like, they look at me and they're like, oh, what? So I find that it's a great conversation starter. And I guess I'll tell a quick little story because I know we're probably short on time.
Oh, but, you're fine.
I was wearing that hoodie. I actually came home from speaking in San Antonio a few years ago, and I was having coffee with my other type 1 friend, Scriven. And we sat down and we were in this hotel in Dallas, and I was kind of tired and a little bit dragging. So I just wore sweats and I wore my hoodie. And I sat down and somebody came up to me in the coffee shop and said, hi, I'd like to ask you about your hoodie. My daughter has type 1 diabetes, so I'm just curious about it. And I told them about Diabetics Doing Things, about the podcast, and they said, oh, that's very cool. Thanks. Nice to meet you. And they went over and they ordered their coffee. And then they came back and her dad, the man said, oh, I talked to my daughter. Apparently she listens to your podcast and follows you on Instagram. So she said to tell you hello. And then I actually got to meet her in Chicago later that year. So just because I was wearing that hoodie, if I wasn't wearing that hoodie, that conversation never would have happened. So it's cool. I love the hoodie. I'm figuring out what to do next. I have a cool idea for some new t-shirts, but million different projects. Who has the time? Yeah,
exactly. What are some standout podcasts that you've hosted with your diabetic guests?
I really love, there's a live podcast that I did with Paloma Guerrero, who's Glitter Glucose. I did that a couple weeks ago. I also interviewed Tracy Brown, who's the CEO of the American Diabetes Association. That was really, really, really cool. And I also interviewed the last guy with type 1 to play in the NBA, Gary Forbes, right before Christmas. So really any of the last 10 or 15 episodes that are on the podcast are really, really good. And the best way to learn about those is on Instagram or diabeticsdoingthings.com.
What is your favorite thing to eat?
Oh man. I don't know. I love pizza. I love pizza. Let's, I don't eat it super often, or when I do, I eat like cauliflower crust. But man, what like a good slice of Pizza Hut pizza. Some people might say like Domino's or Papa John's, but I like Pizza Hut pizza and like a cold glass of Diet Coke or Coke Zero and watching a basketball game. I look forward to the next time I can do that.
Well, the next time you come to Detroit, we'll show you pizzas that are really the best pizzas, Detroit pizzas. So.
Okay, well, I've been to a cool place in Detroit. I can't remember. It was like it looked like a garage, like a car garage, and it was a pizza place. It was really good. I can't remember the name though off the top of my head. So
yeah, and I get Vincetta probably.
Okay.
Of all the interesting people you have interviewed, do you remember who had T1D the longest and how long they had it?
Yeah, I actually got to meet a guy from, I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head, but he works for Medtronic, and he actually tested one of the first insulin pumps when insulin pumps were like the size of a backpack. And he had type 1 for almost 70 years when I interviewed him. And he was an amazing, amazing guy. He lived exactly normal life that he wanted to live. And it was super, super cool just to meet him. And his episode, I think, is probably like around episode 60 or 70. And I love meeting people who have lived with diabetes for a long time, because as you guys who have had diabetes for a long time know, 30 years ago, there was no CGM, there was no insulin pump, there was no looping, there was none of this. It was boiling needles and syringes and cow insulin or regular insulin and analogs, and you had to wait for an entire, you had to wait for, a whole minute or 2 minutes to get your blood sugar reading. And I see people who had to go through that, and they're living these amazing lives, and they're doing exactly what they want, and they have grandkids, and they've had great careers. And that gives me a ton of hope, because we have a lot of advantages now. I believe this is the best time to live with type 1 if you have to have it. And so it makes me hopeful for when I've had it for 70 years and what my life will look like.
Yeah. Why does your diabetic hoodie have quotation marks?
So I fully ripped off Virgil Abloh's Off-White hoodie. So he does things like on boots, he'll put like for walking and he'll have it in quotation marks. I really liked diabetic in quotation marks because the word diabetic, a lot of people struggle with, and it feels like a label and it feels negative. I never really felt that way, but I understand people that do. And so now I've even taken greater care to say people with diabetes or life with diabetes rather than diabetic, because I think it can be really, it can be harsh for some people. But I think it's funny to think that one single label could ever encompass a person. So whether it's diabetic or ADHD or overachiever or Mr. Popular or Miss Popular, whatever, one word doesn't encompass a human. And I believe that with diabetes. So I think there's a little bit of, yeah, I'm a diabetic, but there's so much more to me that meets the eye. It's so much more than that label. So that's why I like the quotes.
Yeah, yeah. And our last one is, what's your favorite blood sugar and why?
Great. Well, thank you for asking this question. My favorite blood sugar is a 69 blood sugar, and I'll tell you why. Because I think it's funny and I'm an immature goofball. But I also like it because typically, especially if you wear a Dexcom, when your blood sugar gets below 70, usually you get an alarm, and that's often the first alarm that you get. So what's the first number below 70? 69. So it happens a lot. So people are often seeing their low blood sugars at 69, which I think is funny. So if you see one of those, take a picture of it, tag me in it on Instagram, I'll share it because I think it's funny. But there's two rules. You got to treat first. So you screenshot, treat first, and then tag. So you treat it, make sure you're okay, then tag me. And I'll have a laugh about it with you. And the reason I like to laugh about it is because hypoglycemia is scary. And I think we've all probably had a low or two that made us feel like, oh, that didn't feel good. You had to recover afterwards or whatever the case is. And, for me to have a little bit of a laugh and know that it's going to be okay is one of my favorite things. So thanks for that question. Tag me in your 69 blood sugars. I'll at least say nice and share it. That's a promise. I think I've shared over 2,500 of these by now.
That is got to be the best answer I have had all week.
I'm so glad.
Love it. I just love it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with us. This was engaging, entertaining, but also informative and inspiring. Thank you so much, Rob, for joining us. I'm sorry it couldn't be in person, but I sure am glad we were able to do it.
Me too. And you know what, guys? Like, I want to applaud. You know, everybody's here. There's 80 of you guys here. I want to give you guys a round of applause, for coming to this. But I really want you guys to really make sure that you tell Tammy and you tell Denise and you tell all of the other staff members what a great job they did with this. This is the first one of these out of any chapter. You guys were the first one to organize a virtual summit. And in a short amount of time, you guys put this together. It worked great. And it was my pleasure to be here. And I look forward to the next time I can see you all in person, hopefully next year. Denise even asked the question, when am I going to be at the next JDRF summit? Hopefully soon. Stay home, wash your hands, take care of yourselves. You know, I want all of us to really stay safe. There was also a member of the type 2 diabetes community who passed away from Detroit. So please be careful. This is a serious thing. And I, above all, want you all to be safe. And I look forward to the next time that I can see you guys in person. So give me a follow. I'm Rob Howe. I'm very easy to find. Diabetics Doing Things is here to stay. We're going to continue to evolve. And my show, Rob Howe Has a Live Show, is going to be, we're going to have your favorite people from the diabetes community, and even some of my friends who don't have diabetes but do amazing, cool, fun things are going to be part of that. So Sunday at 7 p.m. Looking forward to seeing you guys there.